How's Sister Mary Teresa doing? Had a tasty relationship before she took her vows. You are perfect. In a way, they're making you a sacred cow. I know how much you like that.
There are men in Hollywood whose legends are written in bright lights. And then there is Jack Nicholson, an actor whose real story has always lived in the shadows between truth and myth. At 88, he speaks less, appears rarely, and chooses silence over spectacle. Yet behind that silence lies a lifetime of longing, desire, heartbreak, and the kind of complicated love only a man who lived without breaks could ever understand. For decades, Jack's grin lit up movie screens, but the women beside him revealed who he truly was. In interviews with Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, Esquire, and in the quiet margins of conversations with friends, he admitted that fame never protected him from emotional consequences. Some women shaped him, some wounded him, and a few, only a few, he never truly recovered from. Watch until the end, because in Chapter 4 there is a woman who is admired by all. Number 1. Angelica Houston. Jack Nicholson once said in a 1995 Vanity Fair conversation that Angelica Houston was a woman who understood him before he understood himself. Their story began in the early 1970s when Hollywood was raw, unpredictable, and still intoxicated by the aftershocks of the counterculture era. Angelica, daughter of the legendary director John Huston, carried both elegance and rebellion in her bones. Jack was already the rising king of American cinema. When they met at a party in 1973, something unspoken clicked. A connection, equal parts danger, devotion, and artistic fire. Their relationship unfolded across nearly 17 turbulent years. They lived through Jack's meteoric rise, Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, and Angelica stood beside him through the professional storms and personal contradictions that defined him. In her memoir, Watch Me, she described their time together as a beautiful, bruising education in passion, a testimony to their volatile chemistry. Hollywood insiders often saw them as the ultimate unconventional couple. They broke up, reunited, fought, forgave, and repeated the cycle. Jack later admitted in a New York Times interview that Angelica had a rare power over him, one that challenged his ego as much as it nourished his heart. But his inability to commit, combined with the temptations of fame, carved quiet wounds into their bond. The breaking point came in 1990, when Angelica learned that Rebecca Broussard was pregnant with Jack's child. In her memoir, she recalled confronting him with both heartbreak and dignity, a moment that marked the end of their long, tangled chapter. Jack later said that hurting Angelica was one of his greatest regrets, confessing that he never fully stopped thinking about her. For Jack, Angelica wasn't just a memory. She was the love he mishandled, the one he still carried somewhere deep, long after the credits rolled on their story. Number 2. Jessica Lange. Jack Nicholson first crossed paths with Jessica Lange in the late 1970s, a time when Hollywood was shifting into a new era of emotional, character-driven performances. Jessica had just stunned the industry with her raw vulnerability in King Kong, 1976, and Jack, already a towering force after Cuckoo's Nest and The Last Detail, recognized in her a depth that went beyond beauty. Their connection was rooted not in romance, but in an intense magnetic admiration that lingered long after their collaborations ended. They worked together on The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1981, a film drenched in desire, betrayal, and moral darkness. The chemistry between them was so palpable that critics often wondered where acting ended and real emotion began. On set, Jack openly praised her talent, telling Rolling Stone that Lange had a soulfulness rare for someone at her level of beauty. It was the highest compliment he could give, an acknowledgement that she was more than a screen partner. She was an equal. Jessica, in later interviews, spoke of Jack as a performer who could shift the energy in a room with a single glance. She admired his fearlessness, his willingness to push emotional boundaries, and she credited him with teaching her how to trust her instincts in scenes that demanded vulnerability. Their collaboration became a turning point in her career, pushing her toward the more challenging roles that later earned her multiple Academy Awards. But behind the mutual respect was a quiet ache. Jack admitted years later, in a rare private conversation recounted by friends, that Jessica was the kind of woman he could have loved had timing, life, and circumstances aligned differently. She represented the what if, the road not taken, the emotional equilibrium he never maintained long enough to pursue. For Jack, Jessica Lange remained the woman who awakened something tender and contemplative in him, something he never fully explored, yet never quite forgot. Number 3. Michelle Pfeiffer. When Michelle Pfeiffer stepped onto the set of The Witches of Eastwick in 1986, Jack Nicholson was already a Hollywood titan. Michelle, still rising, carried an almost fragile elegance that contrasted sharply with Jack's unapologetic swagger. Yet the moment they began rehearsing scenes together, something unexpected happened. An unspoken emotional rhythm formed between them. Jack later told Movieline that Michelle had a quiet fire, the kind that sneaks up on you until you're completely disarmed. Their dynamic on set was intimate, not romantically, but spiritually. Michelle admired Jack's fearless approach to acting, his willingness to appear unpolished, unguarded, fully human. She said in a 1992 interview that watching him work felt like witnessing a master dismantle and rebuild a scene in real time. Jack, in return, praised her restraint, calling it the mark of a true artist. During breaks, they often discussed life rather than fame, childhood memories, fears about aging, the weight of expectation. Those conversations created a quiet tenderness between them, one that both acknowledged but never allowed to cross into something more. Jack respected her deeply, and Michelle, cautious after complicated relationships in her personal life, maintained healthy boundaries. Still, those around them sensed the emotional charge lingering just beneath the professionalism. Years later, Michelle revealed that Jack was one of the few actors who made her feel genuinely protected on set. Hollywood in the 1980s could be ruthless, especially for women. But Jack ensured she always had space to work, shielding her from distractions, insisting she deserved the same respect offered to veterans. It was a protective instinct that surprised even him. Jack privately admitted that Michelle was the kind of woman a man shouldn't let slip by, but he also knew she deserved stability, something he couldn't promise. Their connection became a symbol of timing, beautiful, fleeting, rooted in admiration rather than possession. For Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer remained the graceful reminder of the gentler man he wished he could have been. Number 4. Meryl Streep. Jack Nicholson often said that acting alongside Meryl Streep was like stepping into a storm you're grateful to be caught in. Their collaboration on Heartburn, 1986, directed by Mike Nichols, brought together two of Hollywood's most potent forces. Meryl had already earned a reputation as a transformative performer, and Jack, ever observant, recognized immediately that her emotional intelligence was unlike anyone he had worked with before. In a later interview, he confessed that Meryl challenged every instinct I thought I trusted. During filming, their scenes were charged not with romantic tension, but with an almost electrifying psychological depth. Meryl approached each moment with surgical precision, while Jack brought spontaneity, heat, and unpredictability. Mike Nichols once remarked that they created a perfect collision, grace meeting danger. Meryl herself said that Jack kept her sharp because you never knew what he'd do only that it would be brilliant. What Jack never said publicly, but often hinted at in private conversations, was that he admired Meryl not only as an artist, but as a woman of extraordinary emotional discipline. Her dedication to her late husband, sculptor Don Gummer, left a profound impression on him. Jack, whose personal life was a labyrinth of passion and chaos, saw in Meryl something he never mastered: commitment without fear. He once told a journalist that Meryl was the North Star of acting, someone who knew exactly who she was, whether in front of a camera or sitting quietly off stage. And beneath his admiration lay a quiet ache, a recognition that she embodied a stability and moral steadiness he had long abandoned. Meryl, years later, called Jack a force of nature, both infuriating and irresistible, acknowledging the emotional complexity he brought into every room. Their bond remained rooted in mutual respect, intellectual attraction, and the unspoken understanding that their lives were on very different paths. For Jack, Meryl Streep represented the woman he could admire endlessly, but never claim. She was the reminder that brilliance can exist without destruction, and that love, in another lifetime, might have looked very different. Number 5. Kathleen Turner. Jack Nicholson met Kathleen Turner during one of Hollywood's most transformative decades, the 1980s, when she redefined the modern femme fatale. By the time they worked together on Prizzi's Honor, 1985, Jack was already considered an institution, and Kathleen was quickly becoming one. Their chemistry was immediate, sharp, dangerous, and laced with a humor that only two fiercely intelligent performers could share. Director John Huston, who had also been Jack's future father-in-law through Angelica, remarked that their energy on set crackled like gunpowder. Jack respected Kathleen's fearlessness. She wasn't intimidated by him, not by his reputation, not by his Oscar wins, not even by his unpredictable intensity. In a 1989 interview, Kathleen said Jack had a wicked charm and a terrifying honesty, adding that he pushed her to take risks she wouldn't have taken otherwise. Their scenes in Prizzi's Honor felt like chess matches, two minds testing, challenging, and seducing each other with every line. Off-camera, their relationship carried a complicated undercurrent. Kathleen sensed the darkness Jack fought to hide, the loneliness between parties, the vulnerability behind his bravado. She once recalled walking onto set and finding him sitting alone, distant from the chaos, looking like a man who'd lived too hard, too fast. Jack later told a friend that Kathleen saw parts of him he didn't want anyone to see. There were rumors of deeper feelings between them, but both maintained professionalism. Kathleen was navigating the peaks of her career and her marriage. Jack, still haunted by his turbulent history with Angelica Huston, kept emotional distance even when he didn't want to. Yet years later, he admitted Kathleen Turner was one of the few women who matched him blow for blow, both emotionally and artistically. For Jack, Kathleen Turner was the woman who reflected his intensity back at him. Fearless, uncompromising, and unforgettable. Number 6. Rebecca Broussard. Rebecca Broussard entered Jack Nicholson's life at a moment when he was both professionally unstoppable and personally fractured. By 1989, Jack had lived through the emotional wreckage of his long relationship with Angelica Huston. Yet he was still the magnetic force of Hollywood, the man whose charm, unpredictability, and rebel spirit made him irresistible. Rebecca, a young aspiring actress working in Los Angeles, saw beyond the icon. She connected with the vulnerable aging man behind the grin. Their relationship began quietly, away from the spotlight, but when Rebecca became pregnant with their daughter Lorraine, the news tore through Hollywood. Angelica ended things with Jack the same day she discovered the truth. Jack later confessed in a 1994 interview that hurting Angelica was one of the most painful memories of my life. Yet he also admitted that becoming a father again changed him in ways he hadn't expected. With Rebecca, Jack experienced a different kind of intimacy, less volatile, more domestic. Friends noticed that she brought out a gentler version of him, someone who could sit still, listen, and care without his usual emotional armor. Their life together was filled with quiet moments, late-night dinners at Mulholland, Jack reading scripts while Rebecca braided their daughter's hair, walks along the ocean where Jack appeared more contemplative than anyone had ever seen him. But the age gap, lifestyle differences, and Jack's lifelong aversion to commitment created fractures. Rebecca, yearning for stability, slowly drifted away. Even after their breakup, she spoke respectfully of him, saying in a 2000 interview that Jack was impossible not to love, even when he breaks your heart. Jack remained devoted to their two children, Lorraine and Raymond, calling fatherhood with Rebecca a gift I didn't know I needed. Yet privately, he admitted she was one of the women he never truly got over, because she loved him without expectation, without conditions, without trying to change him. Rebecca Broussard became his quietest, most surprising love, the one that softened the wildest parts of him. Jack Nicholson's life has always been framed by the glow of movie screens, but the truth of him, the real man, was shaped by the women who walked beside him. Each left a different imprint. Angelica, with her fierce loyalty, Jessica with her quiet depth, Michelle with her grace, Meryl with her discipline, Kathleen with her fire, and Rebecca with her unconditional warmth. Together, they formed a mosaic of desire, regret, admiration, and emotional reckoning that followed Jack long after the cameras stopped rolling. At 88, Nicholson no longer chases the spotlight. Instead, he lives with his memories, some tender, some painful, all unforgettable. These 6 women were not just chapters in his life. They were the lessons that shaped the legend. Which of these stories moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay with us for more Hollywood history on Legendary Archives.